What is up, everybody? Swayze here. In today's video, we're talking 3 steps you should follow to get a good deal on a Dodge Challenger or Charger. Hey everyone, before we dive into today's video, I want to tell you about Octane Coffee Company. It is the car-themed coffee company with a variety of different roasts paired with iconic names. You've got Big Block, Race Gas, The Goat. It's perfect for early morning cars and coffee or cruises down the canyon. It is the coffee for all car enthusiasts. Pick up your bag at OctaneCoffeeCompany.com, link is down below, and get 10% off your first order using promo code Octane10. Now back to the video. All right, since we're talking Mopar, let's get inside the Hellcat and go for a drive. All right, so today we're talking 3 steps or 3 ways that you can get a good deal on a new or used Dodge Challenger or Charger. Now, I've made similar topics about this in the past in general regarding the new or used car market and how you can get a good deal. And I'm gonna link that video up on the screen right now so you guys can check it out after watching this video. The purpose of today's video is to focus specifically on Mopar products because, well, that's what a lot of you out there are wanting to buy. You wanna buy a new or used Dodge Challenger or Charger, but the prices are just way too insane. And even though prices are coming down, which I talked about in my video last week, where I talked about the used car market for Dodge Challenger Hellcats and how those are coming down. If you guys are interested in the details on that, you can check out last week's video. But in either case, not every dealership is honoring those prices. Some dealers are still sitting on expensive inventory. And today we're going to talk about 3 steps that you can take to try to get a good deal on some of these cars. Now, before we get into the steps, the first thing that's most important is for you to decide what exact trim and spec and model that you want to buy. It's a very important step, and it may sound obvious, but there are so many times out there, and I've faced this myself, where you're looking for a specifically Dodge Challenger Hellcat wide body, but for some reason you find another trim level that's not exactly what you want. Maybe it's even a Dodge Charger, and you think, you know what, maybe I'll settle because I really just want that Hellcat powered engine. And I'm here to warn you not to do that. And vice versa too. If you're looking for a Dodge Charger Hellcat and you happen to find a Dodge Challenger Hellcat, I'm here to tell you, don't settle for the model that you don't necessarily really want. Be patient until you find the exact trim and spec of the particular vehicle you're looking for. And don't worry, that time will come. You just have to be a little bit patient, which is a very hard thing to do. I know myself, I'm a very impatient person, so it's hard to miss out on a potential good deal, but there's nothing worse than making a monthly payment, especially a pretty high monthly payment, on a vehicle that you don't really love. You just got it because it happened to be a good deal, and maybe it's somewhat close to what you wanted, but it's not exactly what you want. And you're always going to be looking out for other models that are the exact trim and spec that you want, and you're going to be thinking, oh, I wish I had that vehicle. So that's just my warning for all of you out there. Now, the other thing you should make sure you know, aside from the trim and spec, is obviously your budget. If you're planning on financing the vehicle, I recommend Googling a auto loan calculator, plugging in the interest rate that you expect to get from a variety of different banks or credit unions, and then figure out what your monthly payment is and set your max budget, because that will give you an idea of what you're really willing to pay for a particular car. And always reference that max budget number when you're in negotiations with dealers, because there are times where, you know, you see the car, maybe you've even driven it, and the monthly payment comes out, you know, $100-200 more per month above your max budget, but because you sat in the car, because you experienced it, because you fell in love with it, you may pull the trigger and say, whatever, you know, I'll pay the $200 more, and that could end up being a bad financial decision. So before you go into the dealership, before you even start searching, make sure you set your max budget, because that will lead you to a better financial position in the future, even if you might have to wait a little bit longer to get the ideal dream car. But once you've decided exactly what you want, the color, the packages, the exact model, this is what I would recommend doing. So the first step is to go on the variety of different classifieds websites. Cars.com and Car Guru are just examples of these two, but they're not the only ones. But on these websites, you can plug in the exact trim and spec that you want, and then you can actually sort the findings by oldest listed. These oldest listings are likely going to be able to get you the best deal on purchasing the vehicle. Now, it's not a foolproof system, because sometimes the oldest listings are either completely wrong and that vehicle has been sold already and you can't actually buy it. And at the same time, just because a listing shows as newly listed doesn't mean that vehicle hasn't already been on the site at one point or another. And maybe one of the newer listings is actually almost older than the other ones because the dealer decided to place it, then remove it, and then put it on again. So it's not a perfect system, but it will give you a good starting point to bounce off of. There are actually quite a few dealerships out there that still have 2022 model year Dodge Challenger Hellcats on their lot, and it's likely that that dealer is probably going to be able to take off a little bit more off MSRP than like a brand new 2023 model year that just hit the showroom floor. Dealers are consistently paying for flooring lines, which is pretty much just a line of credit, kind of like a credit card, to be able to buy these vehicles from the manufacturer. And so the longer a vehicle sits on the lot, the more interest that dealership is paying. So they're going to want to get rid of that inventory as quickly as possible. So that's why a 2022 model year that's been listed at the dealership for like 365 days is likely going to have a lower purchase price than the newest model year that just arrived at the dealership. Now, again, it doesn't have to be a 2022 model year. If you want a 2023 model year, that's great. You can still find that. You might just want to look at ones that have been on the dealer lots for longer, because you're not going to get a 2024 model year Charger or Challenger anyways. They don't exist. They're not going to be making them. Now, another thing these classifieds websites will oftentimes show is how often the price has been changed. So you can go to the bottom of the page on the website and see exactly how often this dealership has decided to cut the price, or maybe for some reason they've increased the price. But that will give you an idea of whether this dealership is really wanting to offload this inventory. If they've been sitting on it for 365 days and they haven't changed the price, they might not budge. But if they've been consistently lowering the price, then maybe they're more willing to lower it a little bit more to push it out the door. Now, the other thing to mention about these classifieds websites is don't be afraid to search outside of your nearby area. I'm talking not even 500 miles, I'm talking nationwide. Make a nationwide search for these vehicles, because sometimes it's still within driving distance where you can fly out or even drive out, pick up the car and drive back, but also you can always ship the vehicle. I mean, it's not necessarily the most affordable process, but if you're able to get $5,000 off of a car that's halfway across the country versus one in your area, your shipping is going to be less than $5,000. So it could be worth it to be able to get the exact car that you want for a much lower price. Now that brings me to step number 2, and that is generate a scripted email that you can send to pretty much every single dealership that you found that has some of the oldest inventory. But in that email, I would lay out the exact monthly payment, perhaps the interest rate, if you're planning on financing with Chrysler Capital, the down payment that you're planning to make, and the term of the loan if you choose to finance it, or if you're paying cash for it, just send them an email and say, can you get me to this number, whatever number that happens to be in your head, and ask them that question flat out. Can you get me to this price? Send out that email to these half dozen or dozen or so dealerships that have some of the oldest inventory sitting on their lots. Now, sometimes when I make these videos where I talk about good deals in the area, I get comments down below where people say, oh, that might be great in your area, but in my area, the prices are crazy. And that brings me again to the same point I was making in step 1. Go outside your area. Just because prices might be hot in LA for whatever reason, they might not be as hot in Wisconsin. And there might be a dealer up there where they're trying to offload this inventory because nobody wants to buy a rear-wheel drive coupe when it's snowing half the year or 3/4 of the year. So again, branch out of your local network, because shipping really shouldn't be the thing that holds you back. It's not that hard to set up, and I'm sure the dealership will be willing to work with you as long as you're willing to buy one of their vehicles. So once you send out this email to this dozen or so dealerships, just sit there and wait for their response. Sometimes you'll get a response with a crazy high number, and those are dealerships you're probably not going to really continue working with. But you will also get a couple dealerships, maybe one at least, that will be willing to work with you and actually agree to the numbers. Now, obviously, you can't quote a new Dodge Challenger Hellcat for like 20 grand, but if you're reasonable and the prices make sense to you and it makes sense to the dealership, there's probably going to be 1 or 2 dealerships that's willing to work with you. And that brings me to the 3rd step that you should take to be able to get a little bit of extra off the top. And that is, if you happen to find 1 or 2 dealerships that are working with you and getting you close to that number, but perhaps they don't have the exact trim and spec. Maybe the color is just a little bit off. Maybe it's missing one package, right? It's not exactly what you dreamt of. Then I would recommend taking the information from the various dealerships and kind of putting them up against each other, because no dealership is going to want to miss out on a deal. So if you've gotten pretty close on the exact monthly payment or price for the exact vehicle that you're wanting to buy, but it's just a little bit too high, then send them an email and explain that there is another vehicle in a different market that's selling it for X amount less. Now, even though you may not have any intention of buying that other vehicle that is cheaper because it's not exactly what you want, the other dealership that's actually has the vehicle that you're looking to buy is likely going to start coming down a little bit because they're going to want to win your business. And this is a very important point that I've used in pretty much every single vehicle I've ever purchased, is always have some sort of competing offer. That gives you so much more negotiating power when you're actually looking to buy the vehicle you want to buy, because without having that other offer of a car that's very similar, you're really going to have no idea if you're getting a good deal or not. But if you're getting a better offer for another car, but you don't really want that other car, this competing offer is going to be exactly what you need to get the vehicle you want to get at the exact price you want it. Now, I'm telling you this because I used those exact same steps when I acquired my Dodge Challenger Hellcat widebody about 3 years ago. I found a dealership that had some pretty old inventory. This Hellraisin was sitting on their lot for, I believe, 60 days or so. It was over 30 days for sure, because when I reached out to them earlier the month before, they weren't willing to work with me because the car was pretty new on their lot. But then a month later, they were way more willing to work with me, not only because there were some incentives at the dealership now, but they wanted to get rid of aging inventory. The second step I did was I sent an email to a bunch of different dealerships in the area, asked them what the best price they could get me, and the dealership that had this particular vehicle was willing to work with me, and I used a competing offer from a different dealership of a car I didn't really want to buy. It was actually a narrow body Hellraisin, but I used that offer to talk down this particular car that I'm sitting in today. So I followed these exact same 3 steps and I was able to get the exact deal I wanted. Now, another little tip if you happen to be financing or leasing a vehicle, and something I've learned over the years, is always quote a little bit lower than what you're actually willing to pay. So if your max budget per month is say $600 a month, then quote maybe $500 or $550, because at the end of the day, they're going to try to meet you somewhere halfway, and that's where you're going to get closer to the $600 monthly max budget. But always quote a little bit of a lower number, because that's only going to save you some money down the road. But there you have it, folks. That was my 3 steps to getting a good deal on a Mopar product here in December of 2023. Speaking of this being December, month end, quarter end, and especially year end is some of the absolute best time to purchase a new vehicle. Actually, even a used vehicle if it happens to be at the dealership lot, because during this time period, the dealer wants to get rid of as much aging inventory as possible. They also want to meet certain quotas that the manufacturer has set for these dealers to be able to get some of the max rebates that they can get from the manufacturer. And also, the fact is the manufacturer wants to get rid of as many cars because they want to show a year-end net profit that exceeded prior year. And so all these factors combined contribute to the fact that year-end is probably some of the best time to be able to get thousands of dollars off of MSRP for really any vehicle, but especially Dodge, because they are sitting on some stale inventory as of the end of 2023. Like I said, there's 2022 Hellcats out there still sitting on dealer lots, and not very many people are going to want to buy those when it's 2024. So I highly recommend following these 3 steps. You got to be patient. You got to put in the work of sending an email to a bunch of different dealerships. You got to learn to negotiate where you use one offer against another. But doing all these 3 things, I guarantee you, you're going to be able to get a discount off of what they're listing on their websites. A lot of people who watch these videos end up saying, no, everybody's listing these cars at, you know, X amount over MSRP, or there's no discounts whatsoever. But one thing you got to keep in mind, there's a difference between what their listing price is and what their selling price is. And in today's market, with interest rates being really high and inventory being kind of stale in terms of Dodge product, it's very unlikely that you're going to have to be paying a listing price, especially at the end of the year when these cars are going to want to be sold off. Well, there you have it, folks. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Hopefully it was informative to you. I've used these steps in the past on a variety of different vehicles, not just Mopar, and it's always worked for me. Now, it's not the easiest process. It's not foolproof. There are situations like what we saw about 1.5 years ago where dealers were never going to budge on prices and everybody was asking over MSRP. But these are good methods to follow in normal markets to be able to get a good deal on the car that you want. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button, and if this is your first time stopping by, hit the subscribe button so you can stay on top of all of the weekly videos, everything from car reviews to car advice to everything in between. Also, check me out on all the social media at Schwazy_. I post a bunch of different shorts on there and a lot of informative content as well. But until next time, everybody, I hope you stay Schwazy, stay healthy, have a wonderful day.